Uh, don't really have a joke for this opening. Really like Splinter Cell. I enjoyed playing a Solid Snake. Hey everyone, David here with a new video game review, and this time it's for a game that I wasn't anticipating playing because I really wasn't planning on playing it. But there was a special offer through our local Redbox, and I decided to check it out, play it, and now here I am to review it. And I am talking about Splinter Cell Blacklist, which was one of the most anticipated games of last year because it was the return to form for Sam Fisher. But a lot of people were a little skeptical concerning the casting of Eric Johnson rather than Michael Ironside because everybody was so used to Michael Ironside, and it was the whole David Hayter kind of thing with Metal Gear Solid. Anyways, here I am to review the first Splinter Cell game that I have ever played, so all of that is completely irrelevant to me. That is correct. This is my first Splinter Cell game. I have popped my Splinter Cell cherry, and because of that I feel like maybe I should give some form of disclaimer at the beginning of this review. I'm not that much into stealth games, despite having played not only this game but also the first Assassin's Creed game, and I am planning on playing the rest of the Assassin's Creed games, at least the Ezio trilogy, but I'm not that much into stealth games. I really enjoy stealth mechanics within a certain game, whether it be an action game or an adventure game, that kind of thing, but when the entire game is a stealth game, let's just say that I have a particular threshold when it comes to my patience, and so I get just a little on edge when I don't manage to beat a certain level because I have to sneak around to the point where I just wish I could just go in guns blazing, but I kind of can't, and this is that kind of game. So knowing that, bear with me when it comes to some of the things that I liked and did not like about this game. In Splinter Cell Blacklist, Sam Fisher and his team go up against a group of terrorists called the Blacklist that are threatening to attack America unless the President of the United States pulls out their troops from foreign countries. The story is typical espionage fare that does have some likable characters in the form of Sam Fisher and his cooperatives that I did think that they sold the intensity of the missions that they were going on with some really good dialogue. But there was nothing really interesting that was happening that I hadn't seen before in this kind of spy story. There was nothing there to really make me jump out of my seat. That I felt like they missed the opportunity to really throw in some good plot twists that really would have made me go along with the ride, but never did I feel like this story was groundbreaking in the genre. It also doesn't help that about 90% of the cutscenes in this game take place aboard the Paladin, which is the giant plane that they're in, where they plan out all their missions and they talk to one another and they try to figure stuff out. Almost every single cutscene is in that plane. The only time when you're not in the plane is when you're actually playing the game. So I did think that it was just a little claustrophobic to spend almost the majority of the game when it comes to the cutscenes and when it comes to the character interaction in this plane. It reminded me of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where we're just not getting out of this plane unless something big happens, which fortunately does manage to happen. Things start to change when the bookends of each mission start to get a little bit repetitive. But hey, if you're gonna have us spend 90% of the time on this plane, you better make the graphics pretty, which I'm happy to say, the graphics in this game are actually pretty top notch. I really like the design of all the characters, as well as some of the technology that you use in this game, as well as the various environments that you get to go through around the world. There's a point in the game where you talk to a certain character who is locked up in a jail, and the way that he's moving, I can easily tell that it's motion capture, but it's captured so well that I really did think that the production values in this game are top notch, and the voice work is also very good, with Eric Johnson providing the voice for Sam Fisher. I can't say if he's better or worse than Michael Ironside because, like I said, this is the first Splinter Cell game I've ever played. Will I be playing more? Let's go ahead and wait until the end of the review. But I did think that everybody was at the top of their game, playing their respective roles. And of course, my man Carlo Rota is in this game, the guy that I was talking about in my Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode 13 review, I think. The guy that I said had a brief moment in Breaking Bad. He is in this game, and he plays none other than the main villain, Sadiq. And he was really good at it. Now, don't think that when I started playing the game, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I knew that this is that kind of game that is stealth from the beginning to end. It is Splinter Cell. It's right up there with Metal Gear Solid and Assassin's Creed and even Batman. So I went ahead and I flexed my patience muscles because I knew I was going to need them. And I did think that the gameplay in this game, despite my feelings towards stealth games, I felt the gameplay was actually rather refined. I did feel like everything was fine-tuned and the developers took their time making sure that everything was well balanced. There were several moments where I felt accomplished sneaking past a certain amount of enemies, as well as taking a few of them out using very quiet tactics, like using some of the quieter guns, as well as something a little bit more practical and non-lethal, like the smoke grenades or the sleeping gas. And I really did get that really good sense of being Sam Fisher, being very quiet and just sneaking through enemies, and when I pull it off, it genuinely feels rewarding. But that leads to one of my personal complaints about the game, because like I said, it's personal considering the fact that I have never played a Splinter Cell game before, and that is that the difficulty in this game is rather extreme. I started playing the first third of this game under normal, because every time that I play a new game, I always choose normal. I don't take the easy way or the hard way. I choose the one right in the middle because I'm the middle child. I go with normal. But I was forced to change it to easy, because there was a point where I just hit a brick wall. I just couldn't get past these guys, because despite being at the normal difficulty level, I just couldn't get past them, so I had to scoot it back to a rookie, which is the easy mode of this game. And even then, I still had trouble getting past some of these guys throughout the remainder of the game. It is tough, and like I said, it's probably a personal thing because I'm not accustomed to these kind of stealth games, even Assassin's Creed for that matter. So I guess in a way it could be considered somewhat of a shared fault. Like half of it is my fault because I'm not very experienced with these kind of games, but the other half could be the fault of the developers for not considering that there might be people like me who are trying to get into these games, but because we've never played, we're having a very tough time trying to be as stealthy and as quiet as possible, and we're just not being able to do that because we're inexperienced. But that's not to say that the game is completely unforgiving. It was doable. It was possible. I managed to beat it, didn't I? It's just that it takes quite an awful lot to get there, and it does feel rewarding by the end. And again, this might just be a personal thing, but I really did wish that there were some more Briggs missions, because there's 2 occasions later on in the game where you get to play as Briggs, his cooperative. And when you play as Briggs, it just throws all of the stealth mechanics out the window, and it turns into a first-person shooter, which, as kind of copy and paste from actual first-person shooter games as it was quite refreshing to not have to worry about looking across the corner and making sure I take out a light so that somebody doesn't see me. But don't get me wrong, the stealth mechanics in this game are very refined and very attentive to detail. I even have to give props to the AI in this game. Despite having kicked my ass so many times, it was that kind of satisfactory ass kicking that I got from a game where I didn't feel like it was, like I said, completely unforgiving, because every chance that I got caught or I got killed, I would be able to progress more and more after every try. I would learn from my mistakes and I would move on until I eventually accomplished the mission. But the AI is smart, so it really did make me think and strategize and think from a very tactical perspective, because the enemies in this game would notice small things like, hey, I didn't leave that door open, and I would just be taken by like, wow, this is amazing, until the 4th or 5th try when I would just kill everybody. But I knew I couldn't do that. So if there was one other complaint about the campaign that I would have, it would be that maybe the ending could have been a little bit more climactic, because I did feel like it was just a tiny bit underwhelming compared to some of the other somewhat cinematic moments in the game. But besides the main campaign, there's also plenty of other content for you to do. There are some side missions that are given to you by some of your cooperatives. Most of them are doable and they're quite fun, mainly when you actually are able to beat them. Once again, the difficulty comes back into play here. But then there's others that are either a quote-unquote horde mode, where you just defeat a certain amount of enemies wave after wave, and after a while it could get a little bit repetitive. It's mostly a time waster for you to spend time on. And then there's other missions that have a requirement for you to actually have a second player, whether it be locally or online, the co-op missions. And I would have loved to be able to play those missions, but unfortunately I wasn't able to find anybody to play with me. Which leads me to one of the complaints that I had about the multiplayer, which I tried playing, but there was apparently nobody on the servers for the Spies versus Mercs modes. I tried playing them, but there was nobody. And maybe it's a local thing, maybe it's a server thing, but I just couldn't find anybody to play it with. But everybody was lumped together in the team deathmatch mode within multiplayer, which I actually found to be quite an awful lot of fun. What really added an element of edge of your seat excitement to the deathmatch modes of multiplayer would have to be the sense of not knowing when somebody is around the corner ready to kill you, which is something that is taken from the campaign, from the stealth mechanics of the game. And one of those things would have to be the cloaking device that some of the players were able to use, whether they be on my team or the opposite team. And it was just nerve-wracking. It reminded me an awful lot of Predator, where you would kind of see the silhouette moving and you're like, oh my god, it's right there, it's right there. And you would have to rely on the little radar that's at the bottom of the screen where the little red dot would appear, and then you're like, where is he? Where is he? And then all of a sudden behind me, knifes me with a lethal stab to the neck. It was very thrilling, and I haven't had fun in a multiplayer like that in quite some time. Now, there was one co-op mission that I did through the multiplayer menu, which may or may not have been the same mission that was being given to me by Briggs, which is one of the co-op missions that I told you were kind of inaccessible without a second player. So I don't know if they were the same one. I'm not going to be able to figure out because I can't access it in the actual campaign mode when I'm inside the plane, but on the separate multiplayer menu, I was able to access at least one co-op mission that was unfortunately kind of cut off short because the guy that I was, or the person that I was playing with, got their ass killed. But the time that I did manage to spend with this other player doing this co-op mission was actually rather fun. I actually felt a sense of needing this other person to be able to complete this mission, whether it be giving each other boosts in order to get up ledges or taking out a certain amount of enemies while I take out the other. There was a genuine sense of cooperation in these missions. Okay, so this is how it's going to go down. Despite not being very experienced with stealth games and not having played a Splinter Cell game before, ever, I still thought that this was actually a rather fun game. There were several moments in the campaign that made me feel like a badass, whether it be going in guns blazing with explosions or through the much more mandatory stealth approach, which is what any Splinter Cell game would take, and actually feeling rewarded of having killed all these guys without a single peep. This is genuinely a badass moment to be able to pull some of this stuff off, and when I was able to do that, it felt great. And there were plenty of great production values in the game, from the presentation to some of the voice work, and I still think that this was actually jam-packed with an awful lot of content. They could have easily just given us the single-player campaign, and that's it. Without multiplayer, without bonus side missions, and that's it. And I still would have thought that it was a good game, but I would have felt like there were some missed opportunities. Fortunately, they went ahead and added us some bonus content to keep us busy, whether it be the multiplayer modes, or the side missions, or even some of the bonus stuff that you could collect, such as the dead drops, or the people that you need to capture and interrogate. However, due to my patience threshold, I will say that despite having fun with this game, I don't really see myself playing it again. Because of that, I'm going to go ahead and give Splinter Cell Blacklist an 8 out of 10. I still think this is a rather well-made game and a very fun game, but it's just not for me. It's not the kind of game that's going to make me invest in the franchise and look forward to the next Splinter Cell game. So let me know what you guys thought of Splinter Cell Blacklist if you played it, but if you have not played it and you watched my review and would like to purchase the game, be sure to use the link in the description. It will really help me out a lot. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.